little shorter than the last speaker, of course. This is beloved Migen Dibra, the wife of Florin and the mother of Davis and the daughter of her mother here. And I've been doing a tremendous amount of research to determine exactly what happened in her death. She died of cancer, supposedly. So that's where we started, and we went from there and looked at all the different types of treatment she received and all the information that was available on each type of treatment. And I'll go through this, see if I can make sure. So to start off with, let's just go right into the heart of the matter. She received 2 illegal drugs that had both expired long ago. This was the most severe. We actually had a photograph of the drug when it was being administered. This is paraplactine AQ. Paraplactine AQ has been illegal in Canada since 2007. It only had a shelf life of 2 years in storage. It was way, way, way beyond, since it hadn't been produced since before 2010. How she received it is a good question, which the police hopefully will be able to ascertain. The fact is, this drug was the last one she received. She died almost immediately after receiving this drug. The drug just prior to this drug that she received was Taxol. Taxol is also illegal in Canada since 2012. She didn't get Taxol until I think it was October of 2023. The last production of this for sale was in 2019. Its shelf life is 2 years. These drugs become extremely unstable, volatile, and lethal when they exceed shelf life. Unlike aspirin or some other drugs that become just less potent, these highly dangerous drugs become unstable. And the results are cataclysmic, which were the case in Migen's case. This is the table of contents of what I'm going to be covering. Now I have very little time, 17 minutes, so I'm going to try to move pretty quickly through this. This is the speech details. Again, the speech will be online. You'll be able to download it, so you can get the speech details at another time. And I dropped my background from this to save time. SOAP notes is the subjective objective assessment and plan. They're pivotal for determining how a patient was treated. They are unfortunately highly inaccurate for various reasons. Most likely reason is because the practitioner wants to overcharge. So they over-assess the patient's needs, and thus there's an over-plan. And this is an endemic problem to the industry. I put down a lot of information here that you might want to look up when you go through this. They'll explain more about SOAP notes, but again, timing is a problem. Now, this particular NIH study is very pivotal. It shows that in 104 cases that they tape recorded secretly visitations with patients, with practitioners, that the practitioners had made 636 errors in just 104 visits, 39 of which, if you look at the number on the bottom right, 39% of those errors were on category 1, which is basically the primary reason why the patient is visiting the practitioner. So this is the biggest problem in medicine, is that medicine is more apt to try to pursue profit than to pursue good health for the patient. And that's more the case in hospitals than in non-hospitals, which let me make sure I didn't pass the slide, because I apologize. Nope, it's coming up. Scans and x-rays are pivotal. And in the case of Migen, they had very interesting findings in the Japanese. There's a doctor here that actually treated Migen in Japan. He did a second opinion. His opinion found that among the other things, the scans themselves were the shape of the tumors were irregular. Why that is, we do not know, but as I understand it, that in his 40 years of looking at such tumors, he had never seen this shape before. You can find many other things. There was a problem with the liver as well in the scans. The Japanese had discovered that a portion of her liver was missing. That was never brought up at any point during her treatment at the hospital. Did get confirmed by another lab that was in Canada, and that again is a mystery to this time, which we hope an autopsy will resolve. The federal FDA has a lot of information, particularly information about the testing of these drugs and the makeup of these drugs, the chemical makeup and the properties, as well as the adverse side effects that are known, which was pivotal for trying to understand Migen's demise, as the first drug that was cataclysmic, which was Taxol, never had a reaction that she had. Now, in hindsight, this is probably because it was long expired, but they had no history of any such reaction. The reaction they had also was never posted to the Canadian health authorities, which is required by law in Canada. Pharmacy records can be extremely helpful. We're really hopeful to be able to achieve these records. And as I said, they're two expired drugs. How did they exist in the pharmacy? Where was the pharmacist in this process? He delivered the drugs to the floor to be delivered to the practitioner that actually administered the drugs. How did that happen? How do you make that mistake? How do you take a drug that has expired and hasn't been legal in the country since 2007? How does that end up in somebody's system? Lab reports can be very informative, but I want to get back down to the WHO statistics so you can understand how difficult the hospitals are. 1 out of 300 patients, according to WHO, are damaged by basically errors made by a practitioner. Now, that seems fairly reasonable, maybe. 1 out of 1 million people get harmed while flying an airplane or traveling in airplanes. In contrast, hospitals, it's 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 admissions to a hospital leads to an error that harms the patient. What's far more astonishing is that 30% of those people that are harmed by accident, not something that they were, any kind of intent to do, lead to death. That's a tremendous mortality rate for accidents. I know personally I've broken quite a few bones. I didn't die from them. Most of the people here have had a lot of injuries. They didn't die from them. So why are these accidents leading to death at such a high rate? That's a good question that the medical system has to answer. Here we go. Going through these stats now, I talked a little bit more about toxicology here, but going back to the WHO stats, that's a 2,900% increase over regular standard visits to a doctor. Now, remember, doctors, non-hospital situations also have surgeries, and they do vasectomies, they do all kinds of breast implants, they do all kinds of other outpatient surgeries, facelifts, anything you can imagine can be done in a medical practitioner's office. It doesn't have to be done in a hospital. Yet they're not having the injury rates that the hospitals are. The pharmaceutical company interviews are very interesting because the FDA will not give you conclusive information about the expiration of drugs. You have to actually get that from the pharmaceutical companies, which is a tremendous mistake. Now, the Canada that we're dealing with, the Canadian government in most cases here, they do have both the the exact day that a drug gets approved and the exact day that is no longer approved to be used in the country. That's been extremely helpful. FDA refuses to give that information out without a FOIA request. So you have to get the information from the pharmacists. The pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies really don't want to give any information out for obvious reasons of liability. So in order to get information, you have to completely assure them that they're not your target. Eventually, I was able to get all the information from them. Now, Megan's case is very interesting. There's a lot of codes to protect patients, awful lot of codes to protect patients. Are they adhered to? The answer is absolutely no, they are not. And even when we brought this initially to the police, they did not want to adhere to any of the 54 codes that were broken. We had to pursue a lot harder and with a lot more information for them to finally open the case and start pursuing it as a criminal event. Because of the fact that these practitioners are not held accountable in hospitals, they don't feel that they have any worries and anybody to overlook them. They will pursue actions or take actions against patients that were considered to be, considered by all of us to be unthinkable until the evidence makes that obviously not the case. We're hoping to get to autopsy in the not too distant future. The autopsy can be extremely informative. In this particular case, Megan was originally diagnosed as having breast cancer. She had a vasectomy in 2006. A doctor in 2014, for no apparent reason, put her on tamoxifen, which is a drug that is designed to try to help prevent particularly breast cancer patients from having metastasis form. Problem with tamoxifen is it does severe bone damage to premenopausal women, as per studies done by the NIH and several others for many years, going all the way back to 1996. Postmenopausal women, it causes bone density increase, which is quite interesting. It has an effect on a combination with estrogen that is pretty remarkable. In 2016, they found that Megan had severe bone loss or density loss after she had been on tamoxifen for about 1.5 years. They immediately that day took her off of tamoxifen. In that same study, there was 2 precursors to metastasis forming, but no cancer as of yet, but precursors. So theoretically, that should have been the time that they would put her on such a drug, not take her off. But they clearly took her off because they shouldn't have put her on it in the first place. 1.5 years after that, she has a spinal collapse of 2 vertebrae. Their answer to the spinal collapse, they claim in a biopsy that she had bone cancer throughout all the bones in her body. And that was causing holes in the bones in her body throughout her body. We believe that was probably false, but we don't know that until we get to an autopsy. But we believe that tamoxifen did the damage, and they tried to cover that damage by claiming that she had bone damage. Now remember, the cause of death in the case of Megan is 2 chemotherapy drugs that are completely illegal. So this isn't to determine the cause of death, but this does help us get a pattern that led to her death, led to her being in position for them to kill her with expired drugs. The autopsy will also show us whether or not the good doctor from Japan was correct, well, possibly, because their studies were done in 2022. We don't know if the autopsy will still have remnants of the original tumors. Now, if those tumors were not natural, they may have been synthetically induced into her. They've created the technology to synthetically induce tumors into rats and other animals for testing for cancer products since the 1970s. But they don't have the same DNA. So if those tumors still exist, we can match the DNA. Now, the reason that they may not exist is because unlike human-created tumors, or self-created tumors in the organism, they don't have the ability to maintain themselves. They can't reproduce their cells. So they're injected, but then they eventually dissipate and are dissolved by the system. But they do cause metastasis, which is a very interesting finding that they found since the 70s, that these tumors that are artificially placed will cause the cancers to form in other parts of the body. In the case of Migen, she developed cancer in the liver and in the kidneys, I believe, no, I apologize, the liver and a couple other places in the body. The end result is we'll find out a lot if there's tumors actually in the bones, as they had claimed prior, and we'll also find out a lot if the good doctor from Japan is correct and those tumors that were unnaturally formed or shaped were also unnaturally formed. There's more we can learn from the autopsy, toxicology. In the case of the paraplankton AQ, it binds to blood irreversibly and can only be secreted through the liver, which has already been damaged. So there's going to be a significant amount of, I should say, evidence available for them to find in the toxicology as to the exact chemical makeup of the drug that she was injected with. So very important concept, but the toxicology or the autopsy will be extremely revealing in her case. And one thing about that that should be mentioned is that the elements that we'll be looking for have a half-life that are far greater than the decomposition time frames. So that we should have an ample source of readable material to be able to analyze. Murder is a very strong word as they start off there. It is something that is very hard to use, and we are going to be having to go through the legal process, both criminally and civilly, to prove murder. But the result of our conclusion is based on the simple fact that she received 2 drugs that were way expired, they did kill her, and they were illegal. So whether we're talking manslaughter or murder 1 is really what we have to ascertain, but murder did occur. Now we have a substantial amount of information that we believe will prove motive, and we do believe that it was murder 1, but we'll find out over time. So my summary is basically that hospitals are a very, very dangerous place to be in general. Because they're so dangerous, people that have nefarious intent can live quite safely in a hospital environment. And that's a very dangerous thing for all of us. The police and authorities have to scrutinize where death is very common and mistakes are leading to lethality at a completely unrealistic rate, or impossible mathematically to be natural. Hospital employees tend to take death very lightly, and as such, they're very unlikely to report unnatural events. They just simply ignore it. They learn as a process to move on to the next patient, the next case. I want to thank you for your time, and this was dedicated to Migen, who died an untimely death and was a very, very special human being that the world was blessed to have for the time she was with us. Thank you. And any questions before, I think I have 47 seconds left. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you.